Hi everyone. I think like you probably need a bit of time to get your breath back. It's the first time I've seen it on the big screen, and it's like a stab in your heart every single minute. Absolutely compelling. Jimmy, I want to start with you. Time One was a tense and powerful story of punishment and principle. That justifiably won. It was a double BAFTA winner. There was no commitment from you to do a second series, but here we are. So what changed?
I thought they wanted a second male series, and I never even thought of setting it in a women's prison. But when they said they were thinking of setting it in a women's prison, I thought, well, that's interesting, because I don't think the first series had anywhere to go. The Sean Bean character was done and dusted, really, wasn't he? But we could do something with women's, So it was that mainly, But of course, I knew. In a women's prison, there's so much emphasis on the female body, so we needed a female writer. So we got Helen, Yeah.
So Helen, well, when you were asked to join Jimmy McGovern, it must have been hard to say yes anyway, but what was the vision and ambition, having given this amazing opportunity? What were you trying to both do with it?
To tell a different story about the women's estate as opposed to the men's estate, and to tell it with integrity and authority. And we were very lucky that we had lots of people helping us. We met lots of inmates. We had an amazing cast and crew. So it came together quite easily, actually.
And what was the process of actually working together, co-writing together?
Well, there was a moment where Jimmy wrote episode 1 and I wrote episode 2, and then we had to swap. So I had this second where I'd got to hand the script over to Jimmy McGovern for notes, and then he'd handed me a script and I'd got to give him notes. So that was a fairly ballsy moment, to be honest. But then we just kept swapping until we were happy and we were getting close to production.
Any creative tension, any sort of women from Venus, men are from Mars kind of, you don't understand us, that kind of gender tension?
Absolutely not. Jimmy took the point right from the beginning that I was there to sort of bring a women's perspective. And so if I ever said, well, this is what I think that our woman would behave or a woman would feel in that position, then that was just accepted, I think.
Brilliant. Oh, I've got Jodie. It's a gift of a part, isn't it, Orla?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, watching that first programme does hit you right here. What did it do for you when you read it and thought, yeah, I've got to do this?
I think the thing that I loved about her character was just when not everyone does this, but I went to drama school and you have a lesson and you're like, oh God, we're doing animals. And I was just like, I'm not into this. And then when I read the script, and there was just something so powerful and lioness about her, and there was a very strong felt physicality because she headbutts a situation and she grabs on it with her hands and her teeth, whether it's the right decision or not. But I loved that about her, and it's a complicated trait. And I think the most interesting thing as well about her is the punishment doesn't match the crime, and the fallout is unimaginable and horrific for the situation she's in. And that, in a moment where the best thing about meeting her is you meet her in that free fall panic, standing on the what's the word?
Precipice.
Do you know, I went to Bella because I knew Bella would know. That and falling, big hill, standing on the edge of a big hill and falling off it, and I just was so interested because just to see what it'd be like to be in that kind of heightened mania for such a lot of it for her.
And so much of it will resonate with the time that we're in. I mean, she's just a woman who just trying to keep her kids warm.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like we've all we've all made it to this point, so we've all lived through the past winter. And I think that that's what's so incredible about the writing and how wonderful it is that we're as actors not presented with the situation where you've got a black and white situation. It's incredibly layered and complicated, and it fills you with such rage, and it starts a discussion, and I think that that's really important.
And it does, and it is a drama that's so full of social conscience and so steeped in humanity. I wondered for you, Bella, what you felt when you were together developing and creating these parts.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility, I think, because all of the characters is like a lot of sensitive subject matter. So it's like making sure that that was done right. And although the characters are all fictional, we're representing real people in the world. So it was just, there was a lot of responsibility, I think, to make sure that it was done correctly and respectfully, and as accurately as we can.
And did you actually meet inmates yourselves? And what was it? What do you find insightful in that experience?
I didn't, and I think the thing I was accidentally method approaching this, but I was late by like 2.5 weeks to filming because I was coming back from another job, and there was a very tense window where we didn't know if my dates were going to work. And it was a very upsetting time to think that I wasn't going to be allowed to do it. And I got on set and felt like, oh my fucking God, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was perfect because I was just in this like free fall of, right, I've done so much Googling. I know loads of statistics and I know so many things. And then, but you're in the reality of it. And actually it was, that in itself worked because Orla is absolutely in that pit of blind panic and confusion.
And Andrew, I think it was you who said it though, Jimmy, that you were very conscious of not creating a sort of prison cliche drama. You wanted to avoid all of that. So Andrew, in terms of creating the look and the feel of the series, can you give us an insight into that? What were you aiming for and how did it work?
Yeah, I think the main thing was that we wanted it to feel really, really real. So we went and visited a couple of women's prisons, and they weren't anything like what I was expecting. I think in my head I had like a big old Victorian men's prison. Basically, that's what was in my head. And obviously, Time One was that building was a character, and it was very visual and filmic. And I sort of had that in my head, but also knew ideally it would be different and feel different. So it was kind of a relief to go to the women's prisons and see how different they were. Some of them have this wing building where women are kept for a short time and then they're moved into these houses, and others don't have a wing at all. They're just sort of in houses, and they have about 15 women in each house, and it's sort of like a really shitty halls of residence. Halls of residence are shit anyway, and that's sort of what it reminded me of. And I quite liked that it invited like some exterior world. It sort of felt like that, the airiness of that place, and I really sort of fell in love with that location. And it felt quite atmospheric, and at times, at night, it sort of almost looked like you could shoot a horror film there, so it sort of had this very apt kind of feel to it. And I think that like their stories, the women's stories, are very real, and the real world is continuing outside, and I feel like us having a bit of in and out in the real world kind of accentuated that.
Were there any challenges though, filming in environments like that?
Yeah, so we filmed most of it in Merseyside, but we did go to Wales for our exteriors, and like you'd think it wouldn't be a big ask to pray for cloud in Wales. We just wanted cloud and rain for it to be really atmospheric and brilliant, because that's how it was when we recce'd it. It looked really amazing. And then we just got 4 days of blistering sunshine. And we were like, we're trying to make this really grim prison drama. And it looks, but it still had a great atmosphere. That was a challenge. And we built the set because we couldn't find anything that we could film inside. And that was a challenge because I wanted it to feel real, and I don't really like filming in sets, but we made it work, I think. And just tried to make it spacious enough to film in, but not so spacious that you feel like everybody's having a great old time.
So, when you write dramas such as this, do you write with the intention of pricking our consciousness to make us feel something different, to change our perceptions of, I guess, communities or people we may not necessarily spend our everydays with?
No, I just try to tell a good story. But
How do you define that? What for you?
Oh.
How do you know when you've got it right? Is it a heart thing?
I think, I don't know. If I knew that,
It's intuitive.
I'd be a billionaire, you know.
I'm trying to spoil your secret so we can all be as amazing as you.
I don't know.
There's a magic you've got, and it's hard
Yeah.
to kind of. I wondered if you could explain it for us, because it's really hard to kind of define. But it is that authenticity and that magical way of.
I just think if you're going to sit down and write, it's so hard that you may as well write about something that matters, you know. So I try to pick subjects that matter. But the most important thing is the story, and you stumble. Well, you don't stumble on a story, do you? You stumble on the basis of a story, and then you spend weeks and weeks and weeks making it into a story, you know. So, but I think the thing we talked about most was the difference between story and plot, you know. And I think this is full of story. It's not full of plot, you know. And I define it thus, that if a man takes out a gun to shoot another man and the gun jams, that's plot. But if a man takes out a gun to shoot another man and he cannot do it, that's story, you know. And that's the kind of thing we were after all the time. Story, not plot, you know. And I think we've got it here. I think we have.
I say Jimmy's one of the only people I know who uses the term plot as a pejorative. That's plotty, that is. Okay, we'll move away from the plot, Jimmy. Go to story.
Yeah.
In your own story of your own life, Helen, you were a lawyer before, so I guess that must have been quite handy in this.
Yeah, because I've spent a lot of time in jails and visiting clients on remand and sentence, so I know Jimmy spent a lot of time in jails doing outreach and work, and I've spent a fair bit of time, you know, at work. So going to jails and that environment wasn't anything new to Jimmy and I. So that felt quite, I wouldn't say comfortable, but something that we were really aware of. So when we went to visit people in jail, we weren't remotely shocked. And actually, Jimmy's like, when we went to jail, he's like a complete celebrity. So actually, it's quite easy going to jail. And also, our EP, Andrew, was like complete star of the mother and baby unit. Every baby in the whole place went and crawled towards him. Yeah. So we had quite an easy time in jail, actually, didn't we?
Yeah.
You said before that when you wrote Time One, you wrote specifically for Sean and for Stephen. In this, I assume it was very, very different, but you've also said, which will probably pee off Sean and Stephen, that this is the best cast you've ever worked with.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Apart from Sean and Stephen. You know, no. In both they were brilliant. We got. I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your asses. We got our first choices, so you can't do better than that, you know. So. Yeah.
And what's really insightful about it also is you see the very difference between what a male and female and the prisons themselves in terms of the way the women live and also what they have to lose. It seems that there's a vast difference in that, in the essence there.
Yeah, I mean, like certainly from the point of view of Orla, it is such a broken system in the sense of what's happened to the aftermath of that, of then someone's in prison, that costs. 3 children are in care, that costs. The system, if money is always an issue, and every government is always frustrated about that, then why have a thing in place that puts people that are not at risk in society and not, I suppose the difference is with women going to prison, very often the statistic is the home life is broken down, whereas statistically, if when a man goes to prison, for them often the home life can be maintained and can carry on. But if when you're talking in the context of someone with children, that domino effect of devastation is epic. And I think that's the thing that's brilliant about this show. And then obviously touching on Kelsey and Abby, the differences, but humanising every single character and journey within it. So it's not to say whether someone's right, someone's wrong. It's more giving an an authentic narrative to those stories rather than them just being a blank headline in a newspaper.
It's like that amazing line you say, which is like, when I came in here, I had like a house, a family, and like a job, and now I've got nothing. And you've not even been in for that much time when you say that. Like, it ruins lives very quickly.
Yeah.
I think that's what stuck with me, and that's what brought it home. That's how different it was and how quickly things could just fall apart in their lives. But there's violence and there's bullying, but there's also this amazing, wonderful sense of community that comes through in this. Is that something that you were aware of? And did you yourselves as actors build that sense of community and rapport during working on this?
There was a big sense of community on set, yeah. I think when you're doing something that's so dark, you have to just like we would like singing and dancing to like Jessie J. And it was ridiculous. We did like a conga line onto set once. Of like it was a bit ridiculous. And like even filming, like we just laugh. Like it's just funny. We just laugh because like the subject matter is not funny. But like when something goes wrong, when you're doing something so dark, like if someone stumbles on a line, it's the funniest thing in the world.
You just grab onto it. The lightness.
But yeah, the sense of community was definitely there between all of us. Like from the very beginning, we just bonded, and then and yeah, I think we just all had each other's backs, which is lovely.
I think what's great as well is that very often when you have say three. Obviously, it's a huge ensemble piece, but 3 characters. I think the wonderful thing for us is that actually those moments where me and Tamara and Bella got to be in scenes together are really precious because it wasn't every other scene. They were kind of real, like they're few and far between within it, and so you really grabbed onto it. And then, I mean, the best kind of days were the walking. You know, all the walking between, because it's like herding cats. All of us are talking. You just couldn't. Like Andrea would try and turn over, and there'd be I didn't even hear action. I don't know what we're doing, but I was like, this is amazing. I'm with all these people that I think are brilliant, and I've watched them on telly for so long, and now I'm with them. This is my moment. And so yeah, but you've got to find. I think like just as actors, you just have to. You go in at 10 because we've got to be able to be instantly vulnerable and open, and you've got to make sure that it's a space that everyone feels like they can work and do their best. So with that comes a camaraderie and a laughter and a friendship that we came very naturally on this. It was brilliant.
And that's able to come out also because because of the safety of the space, which is like helmed by Andrea. Of like, it was just a really safe space like on set, and especially because of the dark subject matter as well. It was just it was a really safe place to just.
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't know what it was going to be like either. To have loads of like women and people in one small space all the time, and how everybody was going to get on, how everybody was going to interact. Because we also had our Windsor women, our like background artists, who were very much sort of part of the fabric. And there was quite often a lot of us in this really sweaty set. But it was just I don't know if it was luck or alchemy or magic, but it was a really special experience. And also like it's weirdly exciting doing violence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like doing the violence scenes, because I haven't done that many violence scenes before, and it would be weirdly really exciting, really fun.
Yeah.
Apart from the next day when you were like, ouch, I've got a bruise here.
Bruises everywhere. Yeah.
Even for you as the director, you found it compelling.
Well, I just found this energy on set. There was like this energy, it was supposed to be like a bit of a nervous energy as well, because I'm hoping they come across as quite startling and shocking and real.
They do, didn't you hear the gasps?
Yeah. But to get there is a lot of careful choreography involving stunt choreographers, and you have to be really safe. But when we came to do them, they were just quite fun to do, quite exciting. And I think that's, because we had a great team and everybody was enjoying it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the big going to cinema with the big screen, the whole ritual of that, but there's something quite magical about a good television series, and it just seems that kind of golden era of great drama on telly just seems to extend and extend. I just wondered for you whether you felt that series such as these allows you to play much more. What for writers and cast? Do you love doing a television series? Did it feel very different than doing a feature film?
I love The Apartment, but the only thing that makes that into a movie is it's got movie stars. But if you look at the script for The Apartment, it could be a BBC film, but it's got Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, and it's a big movie. It's a brilliant movie, but only because of a great director and great movie stars. That's all. That's the only difference. You know? I think I'm probably talking rubbish, but that's what I think.
What do you guys think? Do you enjoy the series? Do you think television drama kind of is still enjoying a great run?
I think it was nice. Like with this one, because it's like a 3-parter, it almost felt like 3 mini films, but with like real threads like throughout. Like obviously you see the end of episode 1, like you have to watch episode 2 and then you have to watch episode 3. It's almost like a massive film that's just like there's so much story that has to be split into 3, and I think that's what it was exciting. And also, I mean, it was a nightmare sometimes with the pregnancy bump, because I'd go from like quite pregnant to not pregnant at all.
And remembering not to just bounce on set as if you weren't carrying this job.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's a great medium. I like the medium of television a lot.
And you know, with something like these kind of characters, because it's so ensemble, it just gives everyone the space. And also I think the brilliance with television is, and particularly with these guys' writing, is you're not spending a manic amount of time explaining anything. There's a joy in the silence and a lot of action, however you want to describe it, happens because it's a look between people or it's a stillness with a character, and you have that availability and that air because there's 3 hours to tell this, not we've got 90 minutes, you know. And so that feels like a luxury when you're not, you know, you're not having to play pace. And you can approach the scene however you want to approach it, because, you know, there is the time for them to get the scissors in somewhere else.
I mean, this has been obviously a marvellous project work in terms of we have these great, strong female characters and female-driven narratives. Do you think we're in a sense of there has been much progress? Do you think there's still room to go? What's your perception in terms of where we are in telling these stories, of women, of working-class stories, of female narratives? Do you think there's been rude health?
Moving forward, and I think that this is a huge move forward, and I keep saying this, is that we constantly hear that there are women's stories and women-driven narratives, but then if one of the greatest writers of our time, Jimmy, decides that he can't do it without a female writer, then I think it is time for other people to accept that maybe they shouldn't as well. Because Jimmy could easily have said, you know, I'll just write it myself, it's fine. We don't need a woman on board. But if Jimmy says, no, actually we do, then I think that is really telling, and perhaps maybe a few other writers should open their ears a little bit.
Groundbreaker, a trendsetter.
That's Jimmy all over.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
I was kind of terrified taking this one on because, like, the characters that you described that I played, they very much felt like they came from inside of me. And Kelsey was a character that felt more external, like she didn't already live inside of me, and that was terrifying to, like, be given this opportunity. And, like, this is one of the first things, actually, no, the first thing I've done where I haven't had to audition. So then to be trusted with this, like, character that I didn't feel like it came naturally to me. Obviously I didn't tell any of these guys that at the time, but it was terrifying for me. And it wasn't until I got on set for the first time and action was called for the first time that I was like, phew, it's gonna be okay. Because it was scary because I had a run of having, like, characters that felt very familiar. But then, like, when I got into Kelsey and I realized, I don't know, there is always a familiarity with a character. Like, there's always something that's, like, that rings true. Otherwise, I think it's really difficult, maybe impossible to, like, play a character truthfully if there isn't some truth of it in you. So yeah, I hope that sort of answered. I sort of waffled, but I hope I answered your question.
Do you know what? It was an absolute
She
dream.
hated it.
To not have a dialect coach. I was like, it's not. I was waiting for a load of ADR though to say clarity, and I didn't get anything. So I was like, wow. it's brilliant, but also made so because, Tamara absolutely smashed her accent, and and that in day-to-day life she doesn't sound like that, and that there was so, I think what was just so brilliant about it was that everybody came and brought something, and anyone who's familiar with, say, like Faye McKeever's work, that Tanya's a world away from a lot of her characters, and just this opportunity for all of us, and with Kayla and Alicia, all of us to just have this time to bring a character, and have it with its authentic voice, and I was lucky that authentic voice was mine. Yeah.
I just remember Jodie saying to me, I want to make her more Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Is there a more Huddersfield?
There is. This is my posh voice because I'm on stage. I feel as if it's not until I step away from a job that I can kind of fully appreciate. It comes with the grief of leaving it behind. There's this weird week or 2 weeks after you've finished playing someone, and you feel really odd because everything that you've kept bubbling for eight weeks. What did we shoot? It was something like that, wasn't it? Like 8. The inside, you're kind of always there. You suddenly let go of because real life doesn't require it, and I think that all your lessons and all the things you take away are certainly after the effect rather than before. And I think going into this role, I suppose the thing I wanted to be able to tap into was a fierceness and a lack of vanity. I don't mean vanity on a kind of aesthetic sense. I mean a vanity of going to the places you might not like about yourself, or those kind of things. And also I wanted to make sure that I didn't give a shit whether anyone liked her, because I did. And I think that is important, because I think if you're trying to guide audiences or think, well, I really hope people are behind her, I've slightly lost my way. Like I've done it before and failed. So if with Orla, it was for me very important that I kind of, I don't know how to describe it, I suppose, didn't think about it. Because then with that, just watching it then, I was like, I fucking don't remember. I don't, but it's interesting also because the beauty of it as well is when you're watching other people and you're like, and when I was in the scene with them, I think, do you remember when we did the scene with Tamara and it was about keeping the door locked? That was that was about the last day. Yeah. I think that was our last day together. And the fear of, oh my God, we've got to keep this door locked. But I was like, but we're wrapped tomorrow, so it's fine. But you're like, because you shoot out a sequence. But there's that, making sure you're not so in your own thing that you've totally forgotten to be present to the other people, because what they're doing knocks you sideways most of the time.
Thank you.
I don't think that was the question there.
It was really interesting though, really interesting. It was.
I think you can make. You can't do anything that. You can't make a character do what you, the writer, want them to do. But I think you can make a character want to do what you, the writer, want them to do. And I think you often do that just by giving them time. Just give them enough time, and they will consider, decide, and act, but you need the time. I think that's...
There's a pun in there somewhere.
No. I wasn't thinking about that. No, they just need the time. I think. Yeah. Would you say that?
Beautiful enigma, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mean when you're writing, like you personally need time with the characters, or do you mean you need to give the characters time to make the decision?
give the characters time to make the decision.
Yeah.
And I think they can go. There was a script I read a long, long time ago, and a man's in a changing room, and he sees a wallet in a jacket, and does he steal the wallet or does he leave the wallet? He could do either. He could do either.
I do like during those scenes. They're my favourite scenes to do, are the ones where I'm terrified or being assaulted or screaming or being beaten up. And I can't prepare for them. Because if I prepare for them, then it's not real. Like, if I prepare to feel terrified, like when in life, does something scary happen, but you've already, I guess actually, we worry all the time. We prep all the time for terrifying situations. But, like, I think if I think about it too much and if I prepare, like, how I'm going to feel and what my face is going to do, like, I'm thinking about it too much. Like, we're just saying, like, don't think about it. That's that's the way to, well, I find it's the way that I need to do it. It's just, like, not prepare and not even feel the fear I don't even feel the fear in the rehearsals particularly, because it's not, I don't know, it's like, it's only when action is caught for that first time and the camera's rolling and that I feel it for the first time, because I don't know, because then it's real. It feels more real anyway, and it's coming from like a place of instinct rather than a place of thought and intellect. But yeah, they are definitely my favourite scenes.
Well, I think I've never, like, you know, of all the parts that I would have done, that was probably, could have copied loads of doctors and that. So, like, and I didn't do it with them. So with this, I felt like I suppose you always take unconscious inspiration from everything. I think I'm a right magpie and I nick stuff all the time from everyone. You can just stand in a queue and see somebody do something and you're like, oh, that's such a fascinating gesture or a fascinating, you know, tone of voice that they're using. So, but with that, I'd seen it when it came out, but I hadn't rewatched it then when I got it, because it's standalone, and also I suppose the parts, to me, it's interesting you see similarities, whereas I would have said the character whose name is totally gone out of my head, sorry, but you know the gentleman who's robbed a betting shop.
Oh yeah.
So for me, that's the similarity there for me, the frustration of him, but performance wise, there's too much of your own stuff you're throwing around and I think his was beautiful and nuanced, and he'd done it and smashed it. So if I'd have tried to imitate it, it'd have been a fail.
I admire Kelsey's determination in the end. Like we saw in the first episode, like she decides to reduce and wants to come off methadone because she's like, I think she's living for something other than herself for the first time. Like she's aware of this thing inside of her, and it switches something in her. But like addiction is a phenomenal thing in terms of like how it takes a hold of you. So for her to be reckoning with that and like working to recover, like I met someone who was actually in prison for drug misuse and various things before we started filming, and like the way that she described addiction, wasn't using the same substances as Kelsey, but like the addiction, that feeling of like needing it with every part of your body was the same. And so knowing that and just how difficult it is to then let go of that and to recover, I admire that about her for sure.
I think the things to do with our characters that I think could be, I suppose, wonderful for I suppose from my point of view, for people taken away, is that you take with people in prison. There is the bullet points that you could describe them as. You could describe them as drug addict. You could describe them as criminal. You could describe them as someone who's failed at parenting, all those labels, all those kind of, I suppose, chains that will carry around with them. And actually what this does is show you human and heart and love and fear and failure in all its glory, and that gives you character rather than labels. The doctor. Never get old. Never get old. There you go. Sorry, Jimmy. Sorry, Helen. There you go. It's short and sweet for me.
I think it's both of you, Ben.
Well, because of the SAG strikes, I'm not allowed to tell you. Use your imagination.
You got around that so beautifully. I know we've got an end soon, and I know it's way too early to say, is there going to be a season 3? But when you create something as masterful as this, what more do you want to do as a writer? What do you feel your role is? What more do you want to deliver to an audience? What are you hungry to get out of your system, both of you? It's not awards, it's not accolades. You're not fighting for accolades, are you now?
Well, I get most fascinated by the thing I'm doing next, so I think the thing I do next will be better than what I've just done. And I'm 74, but I still think that,
It's amazing.
I still do that.
I mean, you didn't want to do this one, did you, Jimmy? Truth be told.
I bet you're glad you did now.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy, I didn't know you were 74.
You've been lying all this time.
Lucky day.
Wine.
Wind down.
You know what? I'm an absolute nightmare to live with. I find it very hard, and I think I need a lot of monologuing at the end of most days to get everything you're kind of feeling out, and some poor bugger has to listen to that. So yeah, but I think it's just Bella said something before that I've stolen in an interview, by the way. I did credit you, but
thanks.
Hopefully they'll edit that bit. But just a bit about when you've talked about, if you go through a scene, we haven't lived a lot of these scenes and we haven't lived a lot of these experiences, but when you yourself are crying your eyes out or absolutely devastated, or for you going through the scenes where the addiction's taking over, physically, I'm nicking you out. You say it because you said it better.
No, you carry on. You're doing
But
great.
just doing it, yeah. Tell me if I'm doing it right. But it's just that physically we do go through that. So we know, obviously with the lucky ones, we don't sleep in Carlingford. We get to go home and we get to see, I get to see my little creatures and things like that. But the physicality sometimes that you go through, or the pent upness, and especially because filming days are long and you got to keep yourself in a certain energy for that. And I think that it's a funny one. I think I always underestimated how much it can bleed into life without you meaning to. So apologies to anyone who's sat next to me on a bus the day after filming.
She's such a stroppy cow.
Yeah.
Help me now to give these amazing, fantastic people a round of Finally, Night in the Time will be on BBC One and BBC iPlayer from Sunday the 29th of October. Thanks to you, every single one of you, for being here. Enjoy.